For loops are an important concept in Python. For loops allow us to repeat execution of a code block for every item in a sequence. We can think of them as saying, do this for every item in this sequence. For loops are specified by saying for, and then an iteration variable, and then in, and then an expression whose value is a sequence, and then colon. And for loops always have a code block that we're actually going to run for every item in the sequence. So to illustrate for loops, let's see what they look like when we unravel them. Let's just take this code template and unravel the for loop on this right-hand side. So the code both before and after is going to be the same and run as normal. But the code in this loop code block is repeated as many times as there are items in the sequence. And importantly, before we run the loop in code block every time, we iterate over the iterator variable. So first we set the iterator variable to the first item in the sequence and then run the code block. Then we set it to the second item in the sequence and run the code block, the third item in the sequence, run the code block, and so on until we get to the last item in the sequence and we run the code block again before leaving the for loop. So let's take a concrete example. Suppose that our sequence is this list of 3 strings, and that we're iterating over this list by specifying my sequence here. And I'm going to call my iteration variable myIter. And what this means is that the first time our code block runs, then myIter gets the first item, 1, and then we run our code block. The second time that it runs, then it gets the second item 2 and we run our code block. And the third time that it runs, then we set myIter to the third item and then we run our code block. Now let's suppose that our code actually just prints out the iteration variable. Then what our code would do overall is it would set myIter to the first item and then print it, set it to the second item and print it, and so on. So, for loops allow us to repeat execution of a code block for every item in a sequence. We can think of them as saying, do this for every item in this sequence.